All right, guys, welcome back. Before we get started on today's show, if you could do us a favor and just like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are on one of the podcast apps, just leaving us a 5-star review if you could and you enjoyed the show. Other than that, let's get started. Brooke,
Yes.
how you doing?
I'm doing well.
You busier?
Things are picking up
Yeah.
for sure.
Fall market?
I think people are still waiting to see what comes for October in terms of rate cuts. I think people are also trying to time things like, I'm going to wait for the next rate cut and then before the market, goes back up kind of thing. So I think there's a little bit of hesitancy still, but.
Yeah, I'd agree. So we're going to get into some mortgage, some of the big changes that happened. But
I saw
you
that.
just talked about rate cuts. The U.S. cut 50 basis points, which was big, but they're still, I think our overnight rate is 4.25 and they're at 5 now.
Got it.
But
so
there's still some room there. But what they were saying before was that if they cut 25 basis points, the economy is like they're not too worried about it. If they cut 50, then they're starting to get a little bit worried about it. So I think the 50 kind of shows that, okay, it's time to start cutting rates. We've kind of held on, maybe not too long, but maybe the right amount. I guess we'll find out. I think their job numbers were a bit weak.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what played out. So I guess we'll see what happens on their realm. But I know that in the States, like we've had quite the drop from the very top of the market, but their prices remain at like all-time highs. Not everywhere, obviously state by state, it changes, but their median prices is quite
house
near.
Prices.
Yeah, it's quite near their all-time high versus us. Like we're not as close as we once were to that all-time high, the average price or the benchmark price, as they like to call it.
We usually follow what the Fed is doing, but I don't know. I think people are expecting a 0.5 decrease in October because that's what they did. But just to reference what you just said, they're still at 5 and we're at 4.25.
We'll probably just get another 25 basis point cut, unless some really ugly data comes out. But good data came out, which we'll talk about later. But okay, so let's get into these changes. I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
There's 3 that I want to talk about, and then let's kind of talk about each one. So we'll start with one, we'll talk about it, and then we'll keep going that way. So, okay, so massive mortgage changes are coming. So the Liberal Party of Canada has announced significant changes to mortgage rules as part of its effort to address the housing crisis and make homeownership more accessible. So the first one we're going to talk about is the mortgage stress test removal for renewals. Canadians can now switch mortgage lenders at renewal without having to undergo a new mortgage stress test, which will increase competition among lenders and potentially lower mortgage rates for borrowers.
That's interesting. I like that.
Me too.
You still have to qualify with a new lender and go through all of that. So if anything's changed in, I guess, your credit history or job during the time with that one lender, you still have to qualify for whatever the rate is, but you're not, I guess, stress tested at much higher. Like there is a point where people are stress tested at like 10%. Like it was insane.
It's insane. Yeah. But I think it's kind of like maybe in a way to help cushion the market as these renewals come up more and more, so you can shop around. Because like if you had a rate at 2, you were stress tested at 4.
Yeah.
And now the rate's at 5. Now you're stress tested at 7. 3 percentage points higher.
Right.
So now.
So what it did was keep people kind of locked in with their lender, essentially.
Like TD as an example.
Right. So if there was a better rate elsewhere, unless you passed the stress test, which was higher, you had to stay with your current lender, and that could be essentially more expensive if continued.
And most people couldn't afford the homes they bought today if they were to buy it. Like I think $1 million.
That's a huge point too.
I think $1 million mortgage at the Lowe's was like $3,500 a month.
It was.
Yeah. Like to borrow $1 million.
So people were buying these duplexes in Hamilton for 1.2 because they cash flowed
so well,
which is crazy.
Hopefully they locked in.
They cash flowed at that price.
Yeah.
And now it's much different, but I like that. So if you're going to get a new mortgage though, like first time, instead of just approaching renewal, you still are stress tested.
Yeah, you're still stress tested.
Yeah, so these are just for people that are coming up to renewals. If you did want to shop around, and you maybe have bought a house that's
I think
down in value.
Yeah. I think too, like there's still a lot more to come out. So everything that I'm talking about is supposed to come into effect December 15th. So we're going to get a lot more clarity on what everything means. But I think it's also to kind of in a way like save the market.
Yeah.
Because we're coming up to these renewals and it's not looking good for Canadian real estate.
I have my renewal October 1st coming up. So my mortgage company's been trying to get a hold of me for a long time. They usually reach out with 3 to 4 months time before the end of your term, saying, hey, this is what we're offering you. So back in, I guess, June or July, they messaged me, okay, we have 6.99, so it's a B lender, this property. And I just flat out didn't answer, because I could have locked in then and said, okay, yep, good for renewal, sign it all away. I'm like, I think the rates are going to come down. So they messaged me once a month, oh, we have a better rate, we have a better rate, we have a better rate. Still didn't answer them. And I had my mortgage broker go on and kind of try to fight for it, seeing what other B lenders are offering. And they've come down with like a huge gap from what they first offered me when they reached out, knowing my renewal was approaching in October. So on October 1st, my mortgage is going to go down like $894, which is
significant.
$894.
So I'm thinking about breaking mine, not the second, but eventually, because I think mine's a 3-year at 6.5. That was the time. Like I had no choice. Like I was like, even I was looking at the 1 year and it was like in the 7s, and I was like, oh my God, can it really come down way more? And now it is, but I'll just have to look at the penalty and see if it's worth it versus the monthly payments at that time. So, if we get something in the low 4s, it's probably going to be a lot worth it for me to look into it.
Yeah. And I saw 3.99 I saw on somebody's mortgage broker story, which is crazy. I don't know what lender that was, but the bond yield came to, so 3.99 is offered somewhere. I don't quote me. I just saw it on
I'm not sure
a
if
mortgage broker's
insured or uninsured
story. But the thing about B lenders too is there's a lender fee, usually 1% of the mortgage. Easier to qualify with B lenders. They use gross commission, so when you're buying multiple houses, sometimes you can't stay with an A lender too many times because you out-qualify yourself. But they offered me 2 different options, because essentially they know that if I was going to go shop around to another B lender, I'd have to pay a 1% renewal fee. So they've said, okay, we'll reduce your rate to 5 point something with half the renewal fee, meaning like $5,000 up front. But then we ran the numbers, and taking a little bit of a higher rate, but no renewal lender fee.
Okay.
Typically, you don't pay the lender fee on renewal with the same company, but they knew that when I said, nope, give me a better rate or I'm going somewhere else, they knew that I'd have to pay it somewhere else. So they kind of conflated it. Anyways, we ran the numbers, but yeah, I'm saving $894 on my mortgage, which is good. And that's why I continued to choose 1-year terms, because it allows me so much flexibility. And I mean, on the way up, it wasn't fun because I kept having to renew at a higher rate.
I know. Trust me, I know. I think
it allows me to pull up money easier. It's just like I'm not locked in, and it allows me to just be able to move quick if I needed to.
Yeah, 100%.
So, but it's that was nice to see.
That is nice.
$8,000 a year that I'm not paying in interest. Excellent.
All right. The second one I want to talk about was price cap increase for insured mortgages. So the cap for insured mortgages has been raised from 1 million to 1.5 million. This allows more Canadians, particularly in expensive cities, to qualify for a mortgage with less than 20% down. So usually what would happen was, I think this is how it works, is that if you bought up to $1 million, so $999,999, you could put down 5% on the first 500 and 10% on the next 500. So now they're saying, okay, we're going to push that to 1.5 million. So it's unclear if they're going to say, is it 15? Is it 15% on the next 500K? Right. Like, it's unclear. This one, it's a head scratcher for me, because it's just, I think giving access to cheap credit and cheap money is a recipe for disaster. Yeah. Like having a first-time home buyer buy a $1.5 million home. Like, I guess if they have like really high-paying jobs, but then it's like, okay, why don't you have the down payment yet? Right. If you have such a high-paying job or something like that. And then I think that the down payment portion of it is something where it shows the creditor or the banks that you are someone who can save money. You can have a rainy day fund or something like that. So even the fact that we're talking about a $1.5 million house for a first-time home buyer seems bananas to me. But this one, I don't like. I think it's not great.
Yeah, and I don't think that it's going to be like people are thinking, oh, I can put down 5% on 1.5 million. No, it's not like that. Yeah, I do think it's going to be 15% on the next 500, which, like, let's do the math. So initially or before, on a $1.5 million home, you have to put down 20%.
20%, yeah.
Just $300,000. Okay?
Yes.
Now, if we did, so it'd be 50 grand plus 25 grand plus 500,000 times 25 plus 75 plus 25. 175,000 would
Yeah.
be the lowest if they make that extra
So
500K.
pretty much
15%.
half of, almost like a little bit more than
Yeah.
half of what you would have to put
Right.
down today at
But then
20%.
your mortgage principal is higher, and
The real benefit for all these, who's winning is the banks, because they're making more interest.
oh yeah,
Like that's the big thing is what we really need to come around to is, they're trying to save the real estate market a little bit. Like I get it. Like
yeah,
it's a huge portion of GDP, and there's a lot of people who have bought at these tops who
yeah,
are underwater. And I think this will, I'm not saying this is going to put the real estate market to the moon, because I don't think it will, but these things will help people get into the market.
yeah.
Like, the 30-year amortization period that we'll talk about next will help, and
Yeah.
putting less than 20% down. Like there are going to be people out there who
Totally.
are going to go buy this $1.5 million home. And it's kind of like, are you just transferring the wealth to, a younger person? Like the debt goes from one person to the next. It's a little scary.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you there. But the
Yeah.
30-year AM, that one.
Yeah. Okay. So this one here. So this has always been something that people talked about. So the 30-year amortization option. So first-time home buyers and those purchasing newly built homes can now opt for a 30-year amortization period, which reduces monthly payments and makes it easier to enter the housing market, which there's some truth to that, right? Like,
However, though, it's a newly built home.
no. So they're saying that you can do it on
Any home. Oh, so they're changing that too.
So
Because
it's
when
newly
they
built.
came-
Yeah,
yeah.
they came out with it and it was
And I was
newly
like,
built.
that's so dumb.
Because you have to put, not you have to, but for the
Right.
most part, you had to put 20% down.
That was
on
so
newly
dumb
builts.
because there's no brand new houses sitting there that,
Yeah.
like for the most part, where are you going to find a brand new house?
Yeah. So now, like, if you're single and you want to buy a condo and the condo's 500K and,
Mhm.
and you have you don't have your 20% down.
Right.
Now you can get a 30-year amortization versus a 25-year
Yeah.
amortization, which does help extend the payments. Like it's going to help you get into the market 100%. But again, you're paying more interest.
Yeah, but then the thing to look at too is if you're just looking to get in the market and for you to be able to afford your monthly payment, you're not going to likely stay in that condo for 30 years. So it gets you in, maybe, force value, build some equity, then move it. And then you can
Maybe at the 20% of the next one.
and then maybe you play around with it then.
Mhm.
So I think it's great. I like that for just helping the affordability of even like a condo. That changes your payment quite drastically when you just stretch out another 5 years, which is 60 more payments.
For sure.
Yes, like likely people stay in a condo for 5 years, then they upgrade, and at that point, maybe you bring your amortization down when you have more equity to put down on the next one. But I think it's I think that one's good. That one's the best out of all three in terms of how
To help first-time buyers or help people trying to get into the market, like especially single people. Like when I first got in the business in 2017, I was helping people from the gym who were like paramedics, and they were by themselves and they were buying condos in Burlington for in the 300K. So like 350, 325, I think I sold one for, and it was just a really good starting point at those numbers. Like it made sense. Like, so we're not saying that condos deserve to be 500, 600K. That's out of our hands. We don't control that thing. But yeah, like at that point in time, it was really affordable. And one of my clients had the 25-year amortization because he had less than 20% down, but he could afford it. He could run the payments and he could live by himself.
Those prices are much different.
Yeah, much different. And that doesn't feel like it's that long ago, like where it's like, wow, house prices have doubled in a lot of areas.
Yeah, well, the condo market is still suffering, and like the market as a whole is very slow, and we see all these stats come out. Well, condos are, the usually first-time buyers, right? And then those people that sold the condo maybe move up, and then the townhouse, and then the semi-detached, and then the detached, right? So if we don't have that first level of buyers, it hurts the rest because it's a little bit of a chain, usually.
Yeah.
So if the
condos are big on investors too.
Yeah. And so if investors are,
out, they're out because
they're out right now. Plus, first-time buyers can't necessarily buy those, first entry point level homes where that seller could also move up. Like it's, if the condo market is suffering, it typically trickles upwards to everything else kind of suffering.
Yeah, I agree because you don't have that buyer then moving up. But I think to summarize it is like, look, I think that increasing the amortization for someone less than 5% down it could be good for them to get into the market, but it adds more interest to them and it adds more CMHC insurance to their bill. So over time, who's really, really winning? The big banks. But I mean, if you can get into the market, have principal pay down, and that place appreciates over time, it could be a good investment for some people. Yeah. I don't think everything they said is amazing. One thing that is still a question is, can you put less than 20% down for a investment property?
Ooh, interesting.
Because right now you have to put 20% down. So that's I was on Twitter and a lot of people were talking about, does this mean that investors can do it? Because then you're really just trying to fuel the market, or you're trying to save the pre-construction people who have to put 20% down, right, on these things that they plan to assign, and it's not appraising. Well, now you have more equity because you don't have to put 20% down. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Huh. Well, it seems like they're trying to do something.
They're trying to do something. Yeah. You know what? The underlying thing, let's just be frank, is that the Liberals are getting crushed in the polls. And
Trudeau said, let's just keep moving forward or something. It's like,
what's that mean? Yeah. So I think all in all, a lot of these policies are like, don't have the wool put over your eyes. Like, just know that like a lot of it is like, okay, they're trying to appease young voters because they've lost so many of them because of the cost of living. So like, don't think that these measures are just here to save you. Like they were in power. So I'm not going to say like they caused the mess, but they were the party in power, and house prices have doubled since Trudeau's been in power since 2015, and rent has doubled. So yeah, I just want to make that clear that these policies are not because he's your friend or he's trying to. No, he's just trying to. No.
And when I think Poilievre gets in power, like these are things that he even I think will adopt. Like because he speaks a lot about trying to help people get into homes, and all of this mess that Trudeau's created. Well, these are like a little bit of step in the right direction in terms of actually helping that. So if that's his, like what he's saying to everyone anyways, there's going to be policies like this that he kind of comes out with, which I haven't heard him talk about specifics like this, but they'll probably be in line with, his idea of how to help first-time buyers, how to bring, prices back to affordable levels. These things help.
Yeah, they do. And there's a few things, like we'll talk about more of like election policy and the platforms that people have as we get closer to it. But there's a few things, like a lot of people for the longest time always said, we need to get out of the way. We need to build more homes. It's the supply. And there was John Passalis. He was talking about it on his YouTube channel. And he was saying like, developers aren't just going to like magically build all these homes as to make prices go down. Like they're not just be like, oh, let me just flood the market with all these homes. So then like we're holding the bag of inventory. And he referenced how all these university towns, now that they're cutting off the number of international students, how all of a sudden these, big university towns and all these investors are crying, saying, where's all my students? I can't rent out my place. When you kill the demand, and I've said this 9,000 times, but I just want to reiterate it, is like when you start hurting the demand is when prices can come down. Yes, you can grow supply still, but he's saying, and it's so true, like builders aren't just going to come in here and build 1 million homes and have all this inventory because no one's buying it. Like they're smart. They build more as prices go up. Yeah. And now I know rates are high, but also prices are down, and they're not building right now. So,
well, we said it last time, when we quoted what Poilievre said about the calculation, like there is a mathematical calculation of how many homes are being built and how many we have and how many people you're letting into the country and all of that stuff. So if you're not keeping up with how much demand you're bringing in, obviously what happened was going to happen. So now they're doing things like capping international. All of those things are more focused on demand, which is, I guess, the key.
Yeah. At this point, right? Because you were so heavy on the demand side before, and now, for so long people were saying, well, this is not going to end well.
Right.
And then here we are now in this crisis. And now it's funny, the opposite is happening, where you have these investors or these universities crying, like, give me my students back.
I know.
You can't make anyone happy.
But there's always two sides. There's always something. One good thing will piss off somebody else. That's just the nature.
I know. Anyways, we'll update you guys more as these policies come out. Brooke, you got the next one.
Okay. Inflation drops to target. As of August 2024, Canada's inflation rate stood at 2%. Whoa. A decrease from the higher rates seen earlier in the year. This marks a significant return to the Bank of Canada's target inflation rate of 2%, which had not been consistently met since early 2021. While the monthly inflation rate for August dipped slightly by 0.2% year over year, inflation remains at this 2% mark. This stabilization follows a period of more volatile inflation during 2022 and 2023, where global events and pandemic-related factors caused sharp price increases. The Bank of Canada has responded by adjusting its key interest rate, which was lowered to 4.75 by mid-2024 after aggressive hikes in previous years. So most people know everything that I just
said.
However, you know what's funny is that inflation's back to 2%. I'm not seeing it everywhere. Like, it's like they finally got what they've been trying to get for so long. Inflation needs to be 2%, and it's
the damage has been done.
Yeah. No, because
it's still
growing at 2%.
It's still growing. It's like they're not understanding the concept of inflation. Like Trudeau tweeted about it, just being like, inflation's at target. We're at 2%. We're working for Canadians, but you put fuel on the fire before by printing all that money, and here we are. And prices aren't going down. They're just not increasing as much as they once were. Like, that's what people need to understand, is not to get gaslit by these politicians. Right. And there's a politician out there, and he was like, well, inflation's coming down, and everyone wants to get rid of the carbon tax. I thought the carbon tax was inflationary. Mm-hmm. It's like, man, that inflation is down from what it was, but inflation still means that prices are going up. So anyways,
the 2% mark is a sign of a healthy economy, right? But it's like we went so far ahead too quickly that now that number growing at 2%, people aren't ready to even be at that number, never mind that number growing at 2%. Yeah. So even though 2% is a very good sign of a healthy economy, 2% is a correct target to be at, right, in my opinion. But we went too far too quickly for it to just continue to grow at 2%. I think just people weren't ready to jump forward that quickly, that now it's and it's funny too, like, if the shelter component of CPI, if you actually added like house prices into it, like increasing house prices, because they do like shelter costs, like mortgage interest costs and rent. And if you added house prices in there, like how high would the inflation actually be? So there's another thing. It's funny. It would be wild. You can read all these headlines and we can talk about these, but it's like there's always so much more to a headline, because even that alone, like what's actually included in the basket, right? Yeah. What's included? It's just also confusing when you break it down into like understandable terms. Like, what do you actually, like, what are they trying to tell us in terms of the story they're trying to tell us? Like, oh, it's great, 2%, but then they're like leaving out the fact that house prices and rent prices and all of this, because that's not included in the reading. Right. So it's like, it's always a narrative. It's
data. It's like you have to dive into it just to like know that. And you're like, why don't they include the increase in house prices and inflation?
No. So if you did include those,
oh my God,
where's inflation at?
Imagine running that model. That would be insane. Yeah. That'd be a crazy one. But I mean, the good thing is, if we're looking for like a silver lining, is that inflation is back at target at 2%. Mm-hmm. The bad thing is that the damage has been done. We saw inflation increase tremendously since the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But here we are now with what we have. So let's keep it rolling, I guess.
Like Trudeau said, let's keep moving forward.
We don't want to, he said something. He was like, we don't want to talk about politics anymore. We are here to work for Canadians.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Oh, man. So anyways, we will keep things rolling here. So the last topic we're going to talk about here is the Bloc Québécois supports Trudeau. Is it good? I tried because you're French. Mm-hmm. The Bloc Québécois has recently signaled its willingness to support the Liberal Party in certain confidence votes. Now that the NDP has ended its formal agreement with the Liberals, this creates a new political dynamic in Canada, as its minority Liberal government must now secure support from other opposition parties to stay in power. The Bloc, led by Francois, oh my God, I'm going to butcher his name, is using the situation as a strategic opportunity to push for gains that benefit Quebec. They have indicated they are not interested in triggering an election by backing Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's non-confidence motions, preferring instead to negotiate with the Liberal Party on a case-by-case basis to secure their legislative priorities. One of their demands include increasing seniors' pensions, a key issue for the Bloc. Can you read his name there? Because I don't want to butcher it. The Bloc. Brooke knows French better than I do.
Where?
I don't want to
Where are you
offend
reading
anyone.
it?
It says the block led by
Yves, Francois,
Blanquette.
Blanchette.
Okay, sorry. My French is not
Blanquette?
good, and I don't want to. I
Blanchette.
don't want to piss anybody off. But here we are. But yeah, so it's kind of like the same, right? Like Jagmeet did this big thing where he was like, "I'm leaving Trudeau. I'm out.
Yeah.
Voters, you gotta love that. Like I'm not doing this anymore, right?" And then the Quebecois comes in and says, "Well, we'll support you, Trudeau, if you give us what we want." Because remember, Liberals were giving the NDP, they wanted the dental care and stuff like that. And now it's kind of like, oh, they've just switched roles here. So it's like, it's all just for votes and it's all just to get what you want.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know what's going to happen anymore. Like I know Pierre's pushing something this week for an election to be called and he's looking for support from the NDP. But now if the Quebecois supports Trudeau, it could block it and stuff like that. So like here we are.
Right.
Yeah, here we are
I
again.
think
Just
they
like
wait till the actual election date.
I wish they wouldn't, but I mean
know.
it might just be that,
I know,
right?
because if they partner up now,
Yeah,
that could, because right now, realistically, I think most Canadians are like, yeah, Pierre's like has it in the bag,
which he does,
right? But politicians can be smart and sneaky.
Yeah,
right?
we'll see.
If they want to stay in power, like there's some strategic moves that are clearly being made and talked about.
Yeah, you're right. I think there was a seat in Quebec that was a long time Liberal riding, and it just got taken by the Bloc. So the Liberals didn't regain that seat,
right?
And a seat becomes vacant, I think, if someone can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
They can't serve anymore, so they go to an election. But that seat, I think it goes back into the election pool when the election comes. So it's interesting. I guess we'll see. Yeah, we'll see where this all goes. But
I'm interested to see how the rest of the year goes.
Me too. I'm interested to see, like even in the U.S. too, like they have their elections, so that'll be interesting to see who gets in power there.
Right. Yeah, that one's interesting to follow. Oh my god.
I know. Yeah, it's very interesting.
And it's so volatile. Like they're so divided, and so are we.
Yeah.
Like,
no, so are we. Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane just watching the debate and then seeing tweets and all that. It's like, oh my god, I almost like I need to just shut.
You need a detox from it.
You can go down these rabbit holes. It's absolutely insane, but that will be interesting. Like it's like the train wreck that you don't want to watch, but it's like you have to.
Yeah.
There's some funny things that people on either side will take the other one and kind of mock what they say, and then those go on tangents, and it's like Jesus Christ.
And then they get their people to support them, and they get these influencers to support them, or these celebrities, and they're endorsing it, and it's just like, oh god, it's a lot to handle.
It's a lot, yeah. But I mean, like even I was just talking about I'm supposed to go on a trip, and it's like every time a realtor plans a trip, it's like all these listings start popping up. So it's like I do feel busier. There's definitely a ton of stuff that's coming up in October, and buyers that are like, yeah, like I'm ready. We're having those conversations. Obviously, don't want to push anyone forward until they're comfortable, but. Definitely more active than the summer. The summer was quite dead. So it does feel like, maybe it feels like a winter market to me right now.
Yeah, you're right.
Instead of a fall. Like it's not, and I guess we're still in summer, right? But
usually after Labor Day, it gets busier and you kind of have this like last push. And I think that a lot of like, I checked the hot sheet and like listings are coming on the market. Yeah. It's just going to probably depends what area you're in and depends on your price point and your marketing and all these things. But, we are getting, it's like sellers are waiting for rate cuts and buyers are waiting for rate cuts. And it's like, where are we going to meet and what areas are going to get hit more than
the
others?
sellers think if I list now before the rate cut, maybe I'll get more if I wait. And buyers are thinking, well, I'm going to wait and then jump in. So they're kind of like, it's like a field and they're both on one side and neither of them want to.
Yeah, they don't want to. Yeah, my one buddy, he does really well, but he does a lot of work with the high end stuff. And they have all these agent open houses every Tuesday in Oakville. So he talks to all the agents. And he was just saying like the conversations he's having with some of these, big name agents who made hundreds of thousands of dollars are like, this is the worst year I've ever had.
I know. And I tell the team that it's like, it's tough no matter where you go. The buyers aren't coming out of thin air. Listings aren't coming out of thin air. It's not as easy as it was. So nobody has the magic answer to keep an agent busy. It's just,
it's like the boring thing.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it.
Yeah, just keep
I think this podcast is fun, but we post every day. We put ourselves out there every day. We're trying to make listing videos.
Yeah. And no matter what market, it's like we're
We're
I'll
trying.
always be busy.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm just not as busy, but no, there's a lot of people struggling. So
a lot of people struggling. So
Yeah.
you really got to stand out. But the people who aren't agents, they're probably loving to hear that. But
yeah, I know. Oh my God. Yeah.
anyways, you got anything else?
That is all.
That's
Short
all?
episode for me, but I will miss traffic, so that's excellent.
Yeah, the gardener's closed this
Yeah,
weekend. Me and Brooke
so-
were supposed to do a listing video
Yeah.
at one of our Toronto listings, and I was like, "Oh, the gardener's closed," and she's
Uh,
like, "I am not coming." I'm like,
no.
"I don't blame you."
No.
So we got to push that.
It's
to
getting
another day.
worse by the minute going home. So
Oh man, the traffic
Right.
is terrible. But
so bad.
anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. If you made it this far and you want to book a call with us because you're thinking about buying or selling, you can click the first link down below in the description. And it's an absolutely free call. Just over Zoom, we go over your needs and we connect you with a mortgage broker, whatever you might need, and go from there. So yeah, we appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.